We are on a quest to beat as many of the Halo games as possible on Legendary, as a Marine. So far, we have already conquered Halo CE and Halo 2, so today we're going to be attempting to beat Halo 3 on Legendary, as a Marine. There we go. And that's not all. Last time in Halo 2 we spiced up the difficulty by adding some skulls. This time, I'll be adding them again, along with 2 more. Ever so slowly building my way up to that Marine Lasso run that so many of you have desired. We're going to be using the Halo 3 Trooper mod, created by Drury Muscle 5. The link is in the description. This mod is played in 3rd person, with sniper rifles being in 1st person. We also have the health and animations of the ODST, and some of their traits, such as we cannot pick up or use some weapons such as the sword, brute shot, or gravity hammer. We're also unable to dual-wield, use equipment, or pick up any detached turrets. Well, at least the ODSTs are pretty good at throwing Oh, for fuck. This challenge would raise our cortisol to lethal levels. With the inability to do most things in the game, and having my body be made up of soggy cardboard, this, however, was not the worst part. Because I hate myself, or playing these runs have finally driven me insane, the skulls we have added alongside Anger and That's Just Wrong are Catch and Thunderstorm, forcing every member of the Covenant to be promoted to the highest rank they could achieve, and have the ability to spam grenades faster than the enemy on Call of Duty World at War Veteran difficulty. Little did I know at the time that Catch doesn't just affect the enemy throwing grenades. Oh no, it also affects the Marines. Resets would be plentiful, stress and pain levels would be at an all-time high, and my overall enjoyment of the game will be at risk. But I wasn't going to go crying to mummy and refuse this challenge. After stowing away on the Prophet of Truth's ship at the end of Halo 2, the Chief had decided that he had enough of Truth's reckless driving and just jump out. Moments later, the sex machine Johnson finds Chief napping in the bush, and before waking him up, Johnson tries to steal the porn hard drive all to himself, but soon realises that the hard drive is empty. I told you that this plotline would carry over in Halo 3. As the Chief wakes up, Johnson asks him where is the content of the hard drive. The Chief then tells him that Cortana has it, and that it is safe. For now. With the Chief finally fully awake from his nap, Johnson tells us that he's called an Uber and will be picked up by the river. Upon spawning in, I noticed a few things right away. The first being that we have upgraded from the Halo 2 ODST armor to the very sexy Halo 3 armor, giving us another plus 20 on our already high sex appeal. Very nice. The second was that the Chief was now an AI and will fight alongside you in most encounters like the Arbiter. Now you may think having both Chief and the Arbiter would make this mission easy. It wasn't. The Halo 3 AI is a surefire way to fast track my latest relapse, and for some reason, the Chief just stood there, unable to move from the beginning of the mission. Maybe him being in the presence of the ODST who destroyed the Halo wheel, stopped the flood and killed the Prophet, sent him into a state of fangirl shock. Or maybe he was just watching cartoons inside of his helmet. Now you may notice that my weapons have skins on them now. That is because all of our hard work on both the Halo wheels, we've been allowed to customize our weapons like the average Call of Duty player. I just didn't want to say that I forgot to turn off custom weapons, okay? So that is now part of our ODST run lore. Regardless, once we got to this waterfall, Johnson splits off from the rest of the group, and we are forced into the first encounter, and let me just say, with the skulls I have turned on right now, made combat in this game very unrelaxing, as I cannot stay in cover for too long, or more plasma grenades will get thrown at me than I would care to count. And with my little ODST's fragile body, I cannot be out in the open for too long, or I'll get shredded apart faster than cheap toilet paper. To say this made me want to unplug myself from the Matrix was a bit of an understatement, as this run was off to a good start, by me instantly getting stuck by this ninja plasma throw. It seems that our little ODST cannot survive any explosion of any kind, such as this brute shot that went off on the other side of this tree, and it was enough to kill me. Not only do I have to avoid plasma grenades being thrown at me like they were going out of fashion, I also have to try and avoid these troglodytes as well. Not having a ranged weapon and the inability to throw a grenade made this section more difficult than it needed to be. And this is only the first fight of the game. But after cowering behind some rocks and the Arbiter not helping at all, we were able to push on through to the next area, where the Chief finally finished watching his cartoons and decided it was time to join the fight. Not that he was much help, mind you, as most of the time he was just stood there looking at a rock.
I like that boulder. That is a nice boulder.
Moving on, I was able to save this Marine's life, but he clearly thought I didn't do a good enough job, as seconds later, he ran into some plasma grenades. Voluntary assassination on my ally aside, after grabbing hold of the battle rifle, I was ready to bring the pain to some nearby Covenant, right before we started to have hallucinations of sexy enemy waifu, reminding us that she had the captain's porn hard drive. I really should stop this storyline, shouldn't I? We had finally made it to the river, only to watch our Uber do an impression of Captain Keyes' landing ability. 8 times. This area was a real challenge for us. Not only do I have to avoid grunts throwing their blue balls at me, but brutes with brute shots, a phantom, and sniper jackals on the other side of the river.
Seriously, go and fuck yourself.
After unfairly getting blown up about 90% of the time, my enjoyment of the game started to drop to a staggering -1. But after bashing my head against the wall and off my desk, we were able to make some progress, only to get reminded that Halo 3 was in charge here, and not me. Luckily, these sniper goblins are not as bad as Halo 2, but they are still a serious threat to my long-term health. And just as I'm about to snipe this cretin in the head, I get sent into a fit of rage, as a sniper jackal takes me out just as I pull the trigger. This challenge is great, and I love it. Our little ODST was getting knocked around like a pinball, all my lone brain cell trying to understand why I'm doing this to myself for a 3rd time. We clearly must have picked the scavenger perk before we started, as I looted Johnson's parked Pelican. I must say, I must give him a 10 out of 10 breadcrumbs for his on-point landing. Those lessons he took from Captain Keyes are really paying off. We stand by and watch and laugh at Johnson as he tries to punch a brute. Now I thought this part was going to cause me some real issues, but it really didn't. That's not to say I didn't die, because I still did. A fair amount. Not even the chieftain brute posed that much threat to us. I mean, yes, I did snipe him from a distance, but that still counts. I think I might use this clip here for my application into the FaZe clan, as I pull off some of the most amazing no-scopes you've ever seen. After rescuing Sergeant Chad Johnson, he calls in for another Uber to come pick us up, and we are soon interrupted by some nosy neighbours, and we are forced to hold out until our lift arrives. The good news was that this holdout went smooth, as we didn't die a single time, and our ride out of here was here faster than I expected. After boarding the Pelican, Johnson put his hands on the chief, and we are safely flown back to base, where upon landing, Miranda informs us that they were able to stop the porn upload back in Halo 2, but that the data has now been uploaded to the cloud and is waiting to be sent out to all life in the galaxy from the Ark. Before we can make a plan to stop that from happening, we are prank called by the Pickled Egg Truth, who just threw insults at us and then just hung up.
Get a life, get a proper job. I am horrified at what you've done.
That's a bit rude if you ask me. We spring into action by grabbing some nearby weapons, only to watch this hog get destroyed. Now it was in this part where I realised that catch not only affected the Covenant, but the Marines as well. What?! I had never feared for my life so much when I realised this, as there was now an 80% chance increase I was going to get blown up even more. Or maybe the Marines just wanted to rub salt into the wound that I couldn't throw grenades more than 2 feet in front of me. Who can say? I ended up bursting a major blood vessel in this corridor, as when I was taking cover from the sniper troglodytes, the Marines used their single-digit IQ and threw grenades right at me. Remember the stats from a few sentences ago? Yeah, I wasn't making that up. I honestly felt like I got killed more by friendly grenades in this mission than I did by the Covenant. Upon entering the hangar, we use what we learned from Master Obi-Wan, and use his tactic of the high ground to deal with these knuckleheads intruding on our property. The hangar wasn't too bad, minus the fact I kept getting killed by friendly grenades, or a brute shot that sent me into the next town over. Fuck! Once we cleared the hangar, we are sent into a fit of PTSD as we encounter the spawn of the devil himself, the drones, that flood out of a nearby vent. And these fart sniffers grab a Marine right in front of us, and like the hero that we are, we managed to save—
Betrayal.
Oh. Whoops. That wasn't supposed to happen. But hey, even ODSTs make mistakes, right? Moving on. Making it back to the command center, Johnson asks us to go save the Marines that are trapped in the barracks. I question as to why I should do this, as they have done nothing so far but blow me up in this mission. But whatever, we move on to the next room. Oh boy, the next room. This next room took me almost 2 hours to get past. These Neanderthals were looking to unalive me at their earliest convenience, as I would have a bunch of them charge at me, and even though I met them with a shotgun blast to the face, all the progress I would make would get slapped right back in my face, when a single spike grenade would go off next to me, and a single spike would illegally enter my body without my consent, and I would just die of cringe. This would happen every time a spike grenade would go off near me. I would even try to take out the chieftain from range, but I would run out of ammo very rapidly, or he would just charge me and thrust his giant hammer into my face. This room was very unpleasant, to say the least. After struggling for over an hour at this point, I eventually resorted to using the noob combo just to get past this room. It felt cheap, and disgusting even, but I had run out of brain cells on my 5th death in this room by this point. We join up with the Chief and the Arbiter as we move on through the barracks and save some Marines along the way. The Chief must have died at some point, as he now had a sword, and he looked more confused than he normally does, as he didn't seem to know how to use it, as at some points he would just run at the brutes with a sword and stare at them. Maybe the Chief thought that the image of him with a sword running at them would be enough, but it clearly wasn't. As we make our way into the elevator, I made sure that I couldn't fall off this one, and upon reaching the top, we're met by the mating call of some jetpack brutes. But to be honest, they weren't too much hassle, as the Marines just instantly bombarded them with grenades. Shortly after, Johnson comes running out towards us. He tells us that the brutes have taken over the command center, and that he couldn't arm the giant bomb filled with weaponized farts. We are then forced to go back to the command center and rearm the fart bomb. Now the brutes guarding the bomb were no trouble at all, as I'd gotten my hands on a beam rifle that I stole from the flightless goblin in the previous room. We armed the bomb
armed
and began to make our escape towards the hangar that we had cleared not too long ago. We backtrack through the caves and halls before we make it back to the hangar, and using the high ground tactic once again, we clear out the hangar and manage to escape before the fart bomb goes off behind us and causes the elevator to come crashing down. Does that count towards my falling off elevator shafts? I don't think it does, to be honest. Coming to at the bottom of the shaft, we regroup with some of the surviving Marines and come up with the idea of using the Warthogs to get as far away from the base as possible. However, just as we are about to leave, we are challenged to a drag race by this yogurt top of a Marine. Being the absolute pro driver that we are, we gladly accept his challenge and take him out of the race by pulling this dirty move by crashing into him. But we are met with instant karma as we crash into this thing. As we fast and furious our way past some of these Covenant, we come up to the first real obstacle of this mission. If it wasn't for one of these two turrets gunning me down, it was the space monkeys with their brute shots sending me into orbit. This happened a fair few times, but eventually we got a lucky run, only to get killed as soon as we got flung out of the Warthog, sending us back to the start once again. A few minor dents in my desk later, and we managed to make it past this section, only to flip my Warthog while I was trying to run over this oversized chimp, and then had my Warthog ripped from right under me as this grunt threw his giant blue balls at it. Regardless of what emotions I was feeling at the time, we pressed onto the shield wall to try and take it out, only to have my hopes and dreams crushed right in front of me as I instantly get gunned down by these flying aneurysms. Once we mopped up these nerds, the Progress Express continues as we pass the shield wall, and we sadly had to leave our Warthog behind as we came up to this gap in the highway. After jumping across, we pushed this Marine off the highway just to teach him a lesson about personal space. Now this next part, I was here for 2 hours. I was just getting my human rights violated over and over again. This holdout section alone on normal legendary is a struggle, but as an ODST, it made me want to throw my computer in the bin with the number of deaths I was racking up. I was struggling. I lost count the amount of times I was backshotted by a brute shot and being made to call them daddy.
What are you talking about?
Or the times I just get blasted in the face by a spike grenade, fuel rod, or the wraith that just shows up to the party. I honestly thought this would be the run killer here, and that I wouldn't be able to beat Halo 3 with these skulls on. After bursting a major blood vessel, I decided to take a break and come back once my mental health was like my virginity, intact. Taking the night off must have done me some good, as the next day and on our second attempt, we managed to hold out until the Pelicans had arrived and they were able to distract the brutes long enough for me to take out the rest of them. I mean, yes, it did cost me a new shiny Warthog and some Marines, but who's keeping score? Once I'd given thanks to God for allowing me to pass this aneurysm, we were then suddenly smacked in the face once again by a pair of brutes who wanted to show me their new motorcycles. Despite now physically feeling the veins of my forehead pulse, and with some precise aiming, I was able to steal one of the choppers and mop up the rest of these troglodytes. Moving on to the next area, we come across a couple of Marines and a Warthog. I do the sensible thing of giving the passenger my fuel rod and we roll into the next encounter. That had 3 wraiths, a couple of turrets, and a lot of choppers. Regardless of my driving skills, the Marines were performing above my expectations. The fuel rod and chain gun combo did wonders against Diddy Kong on his bike, and after 13 more deaths, my single brain cell remaining had the great idea of just driving past everything here and try to get to the end of the mission. Our first attempt didn't go to plan, as this Neanderthal with a brute shot had different ideas on my driving and put a stop to us as fast as he physically could. The second attempt, we smashed past the roadblock and came up to another expert landing by Captain Keyes himself. Is this joke getting too old yet? I don't know if it is. Tragedy struck, however, as our Marine with the fuel rod cannon eventually gets blasted in the face, and it's just me and the gunner of the Hog left. And after an intense fight with many close calls, we had cleared the area of all remaining brutes, and we give this Marine that survived this whole nightmare with us the highest reward any Marine could receive. He had earned the name Dave 3.0. Taking down the last of the shield walls, more Pelicans arrive to drop off some more Warthogs and Marines. Lord Hood then informs us that we don't have much time before the Prophet of Pickled Eggs finishes downloading the whole of humanity's porn collection, and that we must put a stop to him. After a quick call to my therapist, Mission 4 starts off with me and the Marines having a romantic drive down a tunnel, while Miranda informs us that we must take out the anti-air defences so that Lord Hood can begin his attack against the Prophet of Pickled Onions. As we enter the building, I'm going to guess that stealth was unheard of by these Marines, as they kept trying to throw grenades up at the flightless turkeys above. Now I know this is only the beginning of the mission, but that doesn't stop me getting immediately sent back to the last checkpoint. Many times over. This was quickly turned into a Covenant gangbang where we were the main course, with a side serving of plasma grenades to the face. After putting my fist through one of my monitors, we were eventually able to make it past all the unholy number of explosions, only to get confronted by more Covenant who were hellbent on spamming grenades at my fragile Christian body.
Oh God.
After an alarming number of deaths, we managed to steal a ghost and run over a brute and a grunt. Now you may think having a ghost would make this next part somewhat easy. It wasn't. I mean, yes, it made taking out the anti-air Wraith much easier because, as an ODST, I can't just run up to the Wraith and board it for two main reasons. One, I would 100% die before getting anywhere near the Wraith, and two, if by some miracle I actually made it to the Wraith alive, we were unable to board any enemy-controlled vehicles. I guess the mod developer hates me, or just wants to see me suffer. After spending over half an hour on trying to take out this one Wraith, we were finally able to make some slight progress before we were stopped right in our tracks by a group of aggressive Jehovah's Witnesses breaking down the door after we pretended that nobody was home. It seems this group of Covenant had taken lessons from Master Kenobi.
Hello there.
As they had the high ground, with a brute chieftain with a plasma turret who made it slightly more difficult to climb these stairs. I eventually was able to get past them by using the ghost I had brought with me. I had no idea why I didn't try this after my first few deaths, but I guess I'm just a slow learner. None of that matters, as I instantly run into my swarm nemesis, the flying pistol goblins. Once we called the local exterminator to deal with our pest problem, we ride into the next area only to get instantly killed by a fellow Marine. Now if this part has taught me anything, it's that Marines cannot aim for shit, and that I do not trust them with any explosive weapons, as 80% of the time, they would end up either killing themselves, or better yet, becoming a serious threat to my long-term health.
What the fuck?
However, even though I was still kinda having fun playing this, all enjoyment was about to be sucked out of me, as Johnson announced that a Scarab had decided to join the fight we have been having. Now I would just like to say, this Scarab fight took me over an hour and a half to deal with. At first, I tried to take it down with the missile pods, but I might as well have been throwing my crusty socks at the Scarab with the effect it had. I then had the 300 IQ play to try and use the ghost to take out his legs to bring the Scarab down, and then jump on board. My plan had its flaws, and my biggest flaw was that I was the one executing this plan, so I had that going for me. Little did I know how long it would actually take to take out one of the Scarab's legs with the ghost. With many attempts later, we managed to board the Scarab and take out its core. It seems that nothing could stop this ODST. This hurt me, deep in my soul. It had taken me over half an hour to bring down that Scarab and board it. And for what? To get all my hopes and dreams crushed right in front of me, and regressing my progress by about 30 minutes. I wanted in that very moment to submit another police report stating that I had been robbed, but I still haven't heard back from them the last time I submitted a police report about me being violated in the library. With that knock to my self-esteem, I kept on going, determined more than ever to take this thing down, and after a further 40 minutes of dying over and over again, we had finally brought the Scarab down again, and I was able to take out the core from a distance, and safely watch the fireworks outside of the blast radius. We joined forces with the Arbiter once again, and clear out this warehouse full of monkeys, only to come face to face with a pair of hunters. And sadly, we cannot one-shot the hunters in Halo 3, but that doesn't stop me from attacking them from a distance and trying to hit their orange spots. After this legendary Marine brings down one of the hunters with a grenade, I then charge him with a shotgun to take down the second. We were able to dispatch these troglodytes on our way to the AA turret. To be honest, after the Scarab fight, it took me 20 minutes to finish the rest of this mission. Once I got hold of the sniper, I took out most of the Covenant from range and used the Needler to mop up the rest, and then used the fuel rod to take out the AA gun. After we had destroyed the AA gun, the Chief had somehow stolen our ODST's assault rifle, as he stands by and watches as the whole UNSC Navy attempts to stop Truth, as he had finally finished downloading the whole of humanity's porn collection. But the attack was too late, as Truth activates the portal to the Ark, and plans to upload not just the whole of humanity's porn, but also the stolen hard drive of Captain Keyes to the whole galaxy. Just as the Pickled Truth ship leaves, another ship filled with Flood arrives. It turns out that the Flood had followed us back to Earth, in hopes to get the hard drive from Truth all to themselves. This porn hard drive storyline is getting a little out of hand really, isn't it? Now with the Flood coming into play, I begin to have flashbacks to the library once again. We then get a voice note from Miranda, telling us to find the crashed flood ship and destroy it, before the flood take over the city and follow Truth for the hard drive. While I stood by watching as this marine squad gets wiped out by the flood, I began to wonder if the flood infection forms could instantly kill me like they did in CE, or if they just popped off me like they did in Halo 2. Either way, I didn't want them anywhere near me. After a lot of backpedaling, we managed to clear out the first lot of flood and throw a grenade right at the right time just to save this marine's life. Not that it mattered, mind you, as seconds later he was killed by the Arbiter. I guess old habits die hard even for the Arbiter. With the idea that the Arbiter could turn around and shoot me at any moment, I continued to mop up the flood below and throughout the warehouse. So far this mission was pretty relaxing. I was able to take out the flood before they got near me. Things were great. I was actually having fun playing this challenge for once. And then I wasn't. The flood decided to step up their game and use their single-digit IQ for once, and start using guns. This hurt me a fair bit.
I'm in danger!
The flood with guns are still not as bad as the flood in Halo CE. It just meant that they had gone from an inconvenience to bulging vein in my forehead annoying. We exchanged some pleasantries with this crazy marine that very kindly didn't shoot us this time. Although the temptation was there to shoot him myself, I decided to leave him alone and we head outside and are greeted by some elites, who, even in Halo 3, still choose to punch the flood instead of shooting them at close range. This had resulted in all but one elite being killed. The surviving elite exchanged contact details with the Arbiter, before more space zombies made themselves known to us. Our little gang continues to blast past the flood that continue to throw themselves at us. After clearing out another warehouse full of flood, we get another phone call from Miranda informing us that the elites are looking for something, and that something is Cortana, with the original content of the hard drive still on her person. But the serotonin being deployed to our brain in this moment had an expiry date of now. If I hadn't slipped into deep psychosis at this point of the game, this section was a surefire way I was about to, as the flood elites in this game are absolute demons, as they still had their energy shield feature that took a lot more shots to put down. Alongside the flood elites being on my shit list, the flood pure forms that shoot at me are rapidly climbing that list of enemies I despise in Halo. With 29 deaths in this section alone, the bottle of bleach under my sink was looking like it might quench my thirst. After around 40 minutes of dying, we were finally able to make it inside the ship, where the Venus flytrap gave us a lecture on how the pawn hard drive belongs to him. We pleasantly take a stroll through the ship and eventually find Cortana. Just as the Chief is about to activate the storage device, the floating testicle that tried to kill us in Halo 1 tries to explain that he can help repair Cortana. With the history these two have, the Chief doesn't trust the flying light bulb. Spark explains that he should have helped him from the start in that moment, and the Chief has no choice but to trust him with the hard drive. On board the elite ship, Spark manages to repair the storage device and a recording of Cortana plays, warning the Chief that she had seen what is on the hard drive and that we cannot allow the Ark to send it out into the galaxy, or all life would not be prepared for what is on there. The long-term effects of being exposed to the content of the hard drive seem to be already affecting Cortana, as she says that there isn't much time left. The humans and elites then team up and come up with a plan to go through the portal and stop the pickled onion. Okay, I'll admit it, while I was writing this script, I had no idea where the storyline is going. I'm pretty much just making this up as I go along, to be honest. Upon arriving at the Ark, we're given a red carpet welcome as the Covenant fleet makes their way towards us. Our ODST finally appears in the cutscene as our Pelican flies down to the surface of the Ark. The Chief then tries to steal our sniper rifle, but then instantly gives it back after he realizes who it belongs to. Now here, That's Just Wrong Skull decided it was going to be a factor on this mission, and sent a bunch of grunts to ruin my day before I had even fired the first shot. It wasn't long before we are reminded that we are not on the top of this food chain. With my aim getting progressively worse as I tried to take out the brute shots, and once my stormtrooper aim had finally finished, we were able to make it to the next area. Now, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This area might have pushed my aneurysm to bursting point, with the number of daddy brute shots, sniper jackals, and grunts making this a real uncomfortable situation. And to make matters worse, a pair of hunters decided it was their turn to violate my mental health mid-fight. Despite the odds stacked against us, and having some moments that would suck your testicles inside yourself, and after getting smacked around a fair few times, we managed to take down these hunters. 40 minutes later. We then later join up with some Marines, who were nothing more than a slight distraction, as I had no ammo left after the last fight. But it turns out I didn't need any ammo, as the Marines just threw the Ark supply of grenades at the nearby Covenant. Just as I was about to grab some ammo and the rocket launcher, we had additional chimp dingleberries arriving in the AO with their prowlers. And let me just say, these things hurt me both physically and mentally. Now I had two options here. Try and take them out with the rocket launcher, but with the lack of a lock-on feature, this was difficult. Or I could use the turret of the Warthog and try to gun them down before they gunned me down. After a little bit of trial and error, I tried the rocket launcher again, and with just a single rocket and a dream left, I was able to take out the first prowler and then take care of the second one from a distance. This vehicle section wasn't too bad, once I was able to get my hands on a brute chopper and I was able to blast past most of these peasants. We come up to a brute with a fuel rod, but I denied his rights to use that against me. He still did, mind you. But once I stole it off him, I gave the rod to a nearby marine and loaded up a fresh warthog with the surviving marines. Using the fuel rod and chain gun combination once again made this next part child's play, as we take down both anti-air wraiths in a matter of seconds, allowing Miranda to bring the ship down and unload the greatest gift she has ever given us. A Scorpion tank. With this new obsession I have with 66 tons of pure sexiness, we blast past the local population of ghosts, hunters, and phantoms. With this new boost of dopamine to my brain, we blast past everything that so much has farted in our general direction. Now this next section I thought was going to be a real nightmare to deal with, but we managed to clear it without dying, and we sadly had to leave our tank here, as she was a bit too big to fit through this gap. You thought I was going to do the can't make it, the door stuck meme again, didn't you? We activate the bridge, allowing the tanks to cross, and we head back outside where we are greeted by another scarab and a Gauss hog. We use the hog to fast and furious our way past all these Covenant and get closer to the tanks below. We quickly mop up these nerds, and when the scarab comes back for seconds, we swap out to the tank. Now I thought with a tank this time instead of a ghost, I thought this would be easy. It wasn't. As whenever I get close to destroying the core of the scarab, my short-term memory would be my downfall, as every time I would forget about the group of choppers joining mid-fight, and each time would rip me apart. Eventually, after dying a handful of times to either the choppers or a scarab, and even this grunt who got a lucky shot on me, I used my monkey brain and parked my tank on top of this building and take out the scarab's legs, allowing us to jump on board to take out the power core, adding one more scarab to this ODST's kill list. After climbing Mount Everest, we once again join the Arbiter and some Marines at the summit. We easily fight our way past the Covenant guarding the cartographer, and we activate the map. We get a really nice view of the galaxy, reminding us what is at stake. We get the location where Truth can upload the pawn servers, and we are interrupted by a phantom, and as soon as he joins us, the Arbiter leaves us once again by stealing a Banshee. Maybe the Arbiter has learned from the Shipmaster from Halo 2, and leaves whenever it gets too much for him. After many rage-fueled resets, we eventually make it to the bottom of this building, where this brute chieftain challenges us to a 1v1 on Club Penguin. We gladly accept his offer, as we run up and kick him straight in the mini chieftains. Now I knew this would result in my death, but I could not deny the opportunity to do so. Also, chat had dared me to do it. Let me just say, this fight was truly a fight for the ages. But even though this chieftain bashed my face in more times than I cared to count, I eventually found out that as he goes in for his swing animation, I could jump past him, effectively avoiding his attack and get a few sneaky shots to his cranium. Once we had domed Harambe, the rest of the brutes wanted justice by rapidly sending me back to the last checkpoint, many times over. I legit threw my arms up in happiness when I heard Johnson's voice saying that he was coming to pick us up, and once the chief calmly walks onto the Pelican, we make our way towards Truth's location. I'll be honest and say that I wasn't looking forward to this mission. This mission on my normal legendary run gave me a few stress-caused sleepless nights, and now doing it as an ODST, I must say, it was slightly unpleasant. But I do set a record for the fastest death on this mission. After checking myself into a white padded room for the night, we come back in full force and we're able to take down the AA Wraith and the 2 Shade turrets, before we make our way up this hill, only to get stuck by a plasma grenade. Once I'd finished my fair share of being blown up, we tricked this monkey into firing his fuel rod, causing a chain reaction with the nearby frag grenade, and he ended up blowing himself up. After we get our Amazon Prime order delivered, we instantly get harassed by the flying wildlife. Don't worry, I'm not going to do that joke again. I already did it twice, and it wasn't funny the first time I did it. Once we blast past the local wildlife, we make our way up this slight incline, and let me just say that this area with the Wraith was less than ideal. As the one time my passenger marine decided to fire his laser and destroy the Wraith, I thought it'd be a good idea to go down the main ramp leading into the tower, but we were instantly met by 2 prowlers who gave us a gentle smooch and sent me back to the last checkpoint faster than you can say, Cortana, I'm feeling submissive. Luckily, the last checkpoint was only a few seconds before we had died. Otherwise, I would have been a very unhappy piece of bread. Many resets later, we managed to make our way inside the tower, and we are greeted by an old friend, the Jackals. We stand by as this marine gets sent into the next dimension, and we eventually make our way to the elevator, where we come face to face with another Hammer Chieftain, and a couple of brutes. Fantastic. After getting my back door smashed in a fair few times by daddy brute shots, we mop up the rest of these mohawk wearing gimps, and try to take out the chieftain. While I was streaming this, the mod developer was in chat and told me the only equipment I can use are invincibility and invisibility, as they don't have an animation in order to use them. With this new information being deployed to my prefrontal cortex, we focus our attention on the chieftain to try and take him out before he could use this power-up. And we did exactly that. With the power of the gods now in my inventory, we power down the tower, and the Arbiter's team does the same with their tower, but the third tower doesn't go down. Over the radio, Johnson tells us that he is pinned down. We are then told to meet up with the Arbiter and make our way to Johnson's tower. After a little backtracking, we managed to steal a Hornet right in front of the pilot. This flying section really wasn't too bad. I was actually having fun flying the Hornet and being able to bring the fight to the flying wildlife. That was until this little birdie ruined my day and fast-tracked me back to the last checkpoint. Once I had finished the routine of going back to the last checkpoint, we joined up with the Arbiter and some red elites. All the differences we had in the past are forgotten. But I still end up shotgunning one in the face by mistake. I guess old habits die hard even for me. Making our way inside Johnson's tower, we are greeted by 2 hunters and the in-game equivalent of jumping into a pile of pine cones. The Arbiter did the worst job at distracting the hunters while I dealt with the flying goblins. With my ego now through the roof, I was quickly put back in my place as these hunters decide to decorate the walls with the tomato soup that belonged inside my body. Once I placed a few shots into the back of these hunters, we take out these gorillas with guns before heading up this elevator. I guess Halo 3 doesn't really have any elevators for me to fall off. What a shame. At the top, we deal with these sneaky ninjas before we finally use the invincibility power-up I have been saving, and just run up to this brute's face, introducing him to my shotgun. Once we shut down the final tower, the Flood Hive of High Charity shows up to try and steal the Cloud Data all for themselves. The Flood then tries to distract us by throwing a giant rock at us, but I think the Chief has had his fill of rocks for today. Making our way back down the elevator, we join up with the Arbiter and killing some big bad space zombies flooding in. Upon making our way outside, we're gifted another Scorpion tank. So we do the polite thing, and use the big boy cannon to blast past the next few Covenant, just to steal another Hornet from this Marine. I tell you what, it's a good thing I did steal this Hornet, as not one, but 2 Scarabs shown up to this party. Dealing with 2 land crabs was a minor headache, as I did die a fair few times, either by these Banshees, or just by my ODST having enough at this point. But this is the last time I died here.
That was a lie.
Once the 2 baskets on legs were dealt with, we slowly run across this light bridge, only to be a little too late, as the Prophet of Pickled Onions has captured Johnson and plans to use him to upload the porn data to the galaxy. Just as this oversized monkey is about to force Johnson over the table, Miranda comes crashing through the window, as like her father before her, she can't fly dropships. At least that runs in the family. Miranda then attempts to save Johnson, but is quickly surrounded by giant apes. Miranda then thinks about pulling a Combat Evolved and shooting Johnson in order to stop the upload. However, just as she hesitates, she is then shot in the back by the walking egg Truth, and like her boyfriend Dave the Marine, she joins him in that big doggy bed in the sky. They can be together once again. Johnson is then forced to press the button that starts the cloud upload process. With little time left, the Chief has no choice but to team up with the Flood, as with them working together, we can still stop the porn upload from spreading across the galaxy. There is still time to stop it. With the Flood on our side for a change, we didn't really have any issues making our way across this part, as I would just allow the Flood to charge in first and they pretty much just killed everything. As we come up to the controls, the Chief and the Arbiter cross the light bridge, and they find Johnson holding Miranda in his arms, as he closes her eyes to finally put her at peace. The Arbiter then walks up to the Eggman and thrusts his glowy thing into the Prophet, finally putting an end to his quest to spread the porn amongst the stars. With the upload cancelled, the Flood then pulls a 180 on us as they attempt to kill us once again to take the hard drive all for themselves. I have no idea where this porn storyline is even going anymore, it just seems to be getting worse as time goes on. With the Flood hostile towards us once again, we begin to backtrack through where we had just come from. While making our getaway, we have backup in the form of Sentinels, as they have once again chosen to be on my side. How long will that last this time? With the help of the Sentinels dealing with the Flood, we make our way towards the exit and jump down this hole. At the bottom, the Chief has flashes of Cortana that leads him to press a button and reveals a newly built Halo wheel. The Chief then comes up with a plan to upload the porn data to the incomplete donut ring in order to destroy the Flood, but to do that, he will need the original hard drive back from Cortana. Okay, this is the mission you've all been waiting for. Cortana. I'll start by saying that this mission almost brought my delicate aneurysm to bursting point. This mission took me 2 hours and 45 minutes to beat. It's still not as bad as the library as a Marine, but was still enough to make me want to take a bath with my toaster. I was starting to question if coming here to get the hard drive was even worth it, as the flood poppers instantly revived a body right in front of me and I hadn't even left the spawn yet. Amazing. As we jumped down this giant anus for a door, we are then thrusted into the first real hiccup of this mission, and had a high probability of ruining our day. The flood here are relentless, and even though my rage for flood with guns is fairly high, it is nothing compared to the pure forms that cover the walls in this mission. The pure forms are a real kick to my joy department, especially those projectile forms that thrust their spikes into my fragile body. Even though the way ahead was full of tank pure forms.
What is that? What the fuck is that?
I had a moment of realization when I remembered that there was a flamethrower back at the Parked Pelican. With my new obsession for fire established, I rapidly learned that my new fascination for setting things on fire may be a slight concern to my family members. But it was very effective at dealing with the flood, and after around half an hour in this room, the Progress Express had left the station. We pass by this elite who attempts to T-pose in front of me to assert his dominance, and then we come up to another migraine-inducing room. While playing this mission, I noticed a pattern. Most of the parts I struggled on had a ton of pure forms within them. Either I'm just that bad at dealing with them, or they're just that rage-inducing. It's probably the first one, to be honest. We begin to fight our way through this Michelin star gulag, only to be met with inevitable death. On attempt number 2, I had spotted active camo lying on the floor, and like a sign from God, I made it my personal mission to try and get my hands on it. After some weird path I took trying to avoid being unalived, we eventually grabbed the active camo and use it to sneak our way past into the next area, where I find a second flamethrower laying next to a fallen ODST, and we take a moment to reflect that this could be us at any point. I mean, yes, it has been us multiple times, but that's not the point. This flamethrower managed to be our salvation and our downfall at the same time, as I managed to set myself on fire a fair number of times. I'm not even sure what made this part worse, the pure forms shooting at me, the combat forms charging me, or my lack of spatial awareness as I fired the flamethrower. Regardless, after what felt like an eternity trying to make our way up this slight incline, we come up to a room that gave me the most trouble of this mission. This room alone took me over an hour. Normally, you'll be able to blast your way past all the flood in this room, and not to worry. But with my used toilet paper body, this room was kind of a pain only a masochist will enjoy. If it wasn't for the flamethrower and this crate, I would not have been able to deal with the pure forms alone, never mind the combat forms in this room. Once the local population of the flood was depleted, I finally made my way to the top of this room, only to get a colonoscopy from these guys and having to do this room all over again.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
I honestly think the AI just waits for the worst times to attack me. Even with many setbacks, we were able to climb our way out of the 5th circle of hell, only to fall into the 6th layer as we entered the reactor room. But it turns out, this room wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, as we only died the once, and before I knew it, we had reached Cortana, only to struggle to punch her barrier down, as the angle for the ODST is slightly off. Cortana seemed to be mentally and emotionally scared after what she had seen on the porn hard drive. The chief then asks her if she still had it on her, and she did. We come up with a plan to shoot our way out. Very original. Upon trying to leave the room, we get a very angry Xbox Live voice message from the giant flytrap screaming at us for taking back what he thinks is his.
Do you honestly think you're fucking funny? Seriously.
Cortana comes up with a plan to destroy the reactor in order for us to escape, so we do exactly that. After failing to do so the first time round, as it turns out you can't use guns to destroy the cores, so I had to reset checkpoint and not use the grenades that I had in my inventory against the flood. With High Charity about to blow, we begin to backtrack our way past all the areas that had left a flood-shaped tumour on my brain. We managed to make it back to the first room, only to find the Arbiter using our tactic of using the flamethrower. Using the Arbiter as a distraction, we just run straight for the Parked Pelican outside, as the Arbiter sacrifices himself for the hard drive's safety. And just as we're about to leave inside the Pelican, this hentai-loving creature tries to stop us, but eventually lets us go as it realizes who is flying the Pelican. And with that, this ODST has conquered both Cortana and the library. Now, it was time for the final mission in the game. Everything we had done in the past 3 Halo games has led to this moment. It was time to upload the hard drive to the barely finished Halo wheel in order to destroy the flood. We pull off this perfect 10 out of 10 breadcrumbs Captain Keyes landing, and we are ready to end this. Now, to my surprise, not only do I have the Chief and the Arbiter for this mission, but we also have a squad of ODSTs. This was now a true fighting force. The flood was not ready for what they were about to face. As we arrive at the spire, the Flood does also, and with my battle rifle and an army of AI companions, I try to remain an acceptable social distance away. Now, somewhere along the way, my barely functioning brain cell had the great idea to give one of the ODSTs a rocket launcher. And to be honest, I know I said it in Mission 4 not trusting them with explosive weapons, but this was probably the best decision I've ever made. As this ODST was an absolute legend with the rocket launcher, being able to take out the pure forms climbing the spire before they had even a chance to change into the pain in my ass shooting ones. Now, I wasn't sure if it was the amount of alcohol I was forced to consume in order to deal with the last mission, but I just kept dying here for some reason, forcing me to take cover behind this wall and watch as the Arbiter turns the Flood into scrambled eggs, and we were able to begin our ascension of the spire. It didn't take us long to climb to the top of the spire and reach the door. I mean, yeah, I did die a few times, but who's really keeping score? However, we are instantly forced into a halt, as the floating light bulb refuses to open the door because the Flood was still after the hard drive that we possessed. After a good couple of minutes and some minor deaths holding out against waves of Flood, Spark finally decided to open the door and we were able to make our way to the main control room, where, upon entering, the Chief hands the hard drive over to Johnson so he can corrupt the barely finished Halo Wheel system and use it to destroy the Flood once and for all. Spark tries to explain to Johnson that the giant donut systems just aren't ready or powerful enough yet to take the force of the hard drive. But like the Chad that he is, Johnson doesn't listen to him, and in that moment, Spark then decides to pull off a top 10 anime betrayals list and attempts to steal the hard drive all to himself by firing his laser at Johnson. And just like he did in CE, Johnson has died once again. With my vision now fully red and the vein in my forehead pulsing, we manage to sidestep Spark's lasers as he attempts to kill us to keep us away from the hard drive. But little did that floating light bulb know, Johnson was just barely alive, and like the Chad that he is, he managed to fire off the laser and get a shot on Spark, right before we run up and steal the Spartan laser for ourselves, and after a couple of shots, the floating testicle explodes. The Chief tries to comfort Johnson as he is dying. The Chief then steals the hard drive back as the alpha male takes his last breath. With the hard drive now in our hands, we upload the data to the system, and as the unfinished ring tries to process the data, the ring starts to collapse around us. While making our escape, I noticed that the Chief had disappeared, probably gone off to watch his cartoons again. Who can say? Regardless, we blast past some more Flood and Sentinels, and it turns out that the Arbiter has been holding back on us, as he pulls off this impressive vertical leap right in front of us. I had no idea that the Arbiter was Spider-Man. Even though we've just discovered the Arbiter's secret identity, we still managed to thin out the local population of Flood and make our way towards the Warthog Run. Now this was the most tense Warthog Run of my life. I know I said that back in the CE video, but this run was a different level. So much so that I had to slip my Crocs from Eco mode into Sports mode. With everything exploding around me, I was starting to get a little bit concerned by the percentage increase that I would end up falling off the track like I do in Rainbow Road. And let me tell you, the adrenaline rush was real. My heart was pounding, sweat was pouring, and I may or may not have had a minor heart attack moment when I flipped the Warthog mid-run, but I was able to recover it pretty quickly. And once my blood pressure was through the ozone layer, I laid my eyes on the ship, and against all odds, we managed to make the jump into the hangar, only for the Arbiter to almost get crushed by a Scorpion tank, and the Chief almost gets knocked out the hangar as the ship leaves the exploding ring. Sometime later, and back on Earth, the UNSC holds another ceremony to honour the life of Dave the Marine, Dave 2.0, and the Super Chad, Sergeant Johnson, as they all had given their lives to protect the porn hard drive. Meanwhile, the Chief is stuck on the back half of the ship that is now lost and drifting in space. He sees this as the perfect opportunity to climb his way into a cryopod alone with the hard drive, so he can finally get to see what all this was for, what was on Captain Keyes' hard drive.
God damn it!
This run had pushed my mental health to its limits, with over 18 hours of in-game time and 424 gigabytes of footage. On a difficulty scale from easy peasy lemon squeezy to difficult lemon difficult, I'd rate this challenge as just don't try it. Playing through the Halo games as a Marine was a lot of fun. It brought back a lot of memories of playing the series as a kid, and getting to replay these games as a Marine was one of my childhood wishes, and was an incredible experience, and I hope you guys enjoyed the ride. A massive and huge shout out to Dre Muscle 5 for making these incredible mods. I highly recommend them. Just don't do it on Legendary, it's really not worth your mental health. And now, with this series complete, I can finally get some rest, and not worry about doing another Marine Run video ever. You have got to be kidding me.